Welcome to our episode of She Speaks, and I have a treat for you today. Our guest is Ceitci, I'm going to say this right, Demirkova.
Correct. Thank you so much
It's such a beautiful last name. It sounds very regal, and it fits you so well.
It means strong as iron.
Ooh.
It comes from Turkish.
Wow.
Demir. Yes.
Demir. Maybe I can change my last name a little bit then. Well, delighted to have you here. This is going to be a great conversation. You've had quite a life, quite a journey.
You. Thank you.
But before we get into anything too serious, we like to ask a fun question at the beginning. And so I want to know what your most embarrassing moment has been.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on She Leads. It's an honor for me. And so I came from Bulgaria. And the first 6 years of my life here in the U.S., nobody told me that crack up and crackhead are not the same exact word. So every time I heard somebody cracking up, I would think that crackhead means somebody who is cracking up jokes. So for 6 years, everybody who made me laugh, I said, "Oh my gosh, this is so funny. You crack me up. You're such a funny crackhead." And people laughed even more. And so one day I was with my best friend. We were attending a conference, and one of our mentors was speaking, and she was saying some kind of a funny story, and she laughed, and we all laughed. And I turned next to her, and I said, "She's the best crackhead I've ever heard."
Oh.
And my friend was like, "Do you know that crackhead does not mean what you're thinking?" I'm like, "How does it not mean crack up? Like somebody's making you laugh." So that is an embarrassing moment because for 6 years I used that in sermons, on stage, at different meetings. I would call people crackheads because I really thought that that meant crack up. So.
And I wonder, why didn't anybody say anything
And nobody
earlier?
ever corrected me because I think they all thought it's so funny. And therefore, I just went on.
It went on and on.
And 6 years.
Oh,
I know.
Well, now you know the difference.
Yes, now it's a good thing I do.
Well, and you said you came here from Bulgaria. When did you come?
December 5th, 94, when I had just turned 19.
Okay.
Yes.
What was that journey like, and why did you come to the U.S.?
Interesting, because communism had fallen in 1989. I received the Lord when I was 16, and I immediately felt like God's call on my life is to travel and preach the gospel.
Wow. At 16?
At 16. I wanted to go to a Bible college, but there were no Bible colleges in Bulgaria at that time. So I applied to go to Germany. I spoke German at the time. I was a German translator, and I never got accepted anywhere because we didn't have enough money. And American missionaries came to my hometown, and they were like, "Well, we have Bible colleges in America, and maybe you can come and study at Victory Bible College at the time in Tulsa, Oklahoma."
Wow.
And I'm thinking, why would I do America? Like, why would I study in America? I don't speak English at all. I'm talking to them through a translator. And I went home that night, and the Lord spoke to me and said, "Actually, America is where I want you to go. And if you go, your family will come to know me. I will provide all of the funds, and I will open all the doors for you to travel and speak." And I said, well, two big problems. One, I can't just get a visa because at that time, after communism had fallen, nobody was going out of the country. I mean, the visa restrictions were super high. And then you had to have a lot of money to even go and get a plane ticket. And then I had no idea how I'm going to learn English and start college in the meantime. And so the Lord, at that time, I'm 18. So at 18, you just hear from the Lord, you get so excited.
Yes.
Thank God I didn't use a lot of logic to what I was hearing to question God. So I said yes, because the Lord basically said, I'll give you an understanding to speak English. I'll provide all of the finances, and nobody says no to me when I have said yes. So you're going to get a visa.
Wow.
And so I literally, there were a lot of different miracles that took place, but I left December 5th, and I learned English in 2 months, and I started school, and I came with $100 here.
Wow. So you heard the Lord speak to you at 18, and by 19 years old, a year or so later, you were here in the U.S. with a full $100.
Yes.
How
yes.
is that for your parents to let you go to a foreign country that you didn't speak the language and only $100?
Oh, nobody really thought I was going to survive longer than 2 weeks because I had money just for a very short period of time. I had the missionaries that were here. They were going to help me start school, and then I was just kind of on my own. I got a visa in a supernatural way because at that point, I didn't speak the language, so the Lord had to basically speak through me supernaturally to get the visa. And then the first time it was denied. The second time I went a few days later and I got approved because I had to prove that I have income. And these missionaries, another set of missionaries, helped me with that part. So there were several different miraculous things that happened within a week. And then I packed my suitcases. I booked a ticket before I even had the visa. And then I bought the ticket with all of my parents' savings. It was $450 one way. But then they wanted a round trip ticket in order to get you the ticket at that time for the visa. And this couple that was helping me, they paid the other half. So that's how I showed up. And they handed me $100 and said, okay, you need to have at least $100 to start life with in the U.S. And so I thought $100, that's a lot of money because it can last in Bulgaria at that time for a whole month. But when I showed up here, I realized that's not a lot of money.
Yeah.
So it was a very faith journey for sure.
Well, you said something that's so good. You didn't think about it logically. Otherwise, you'd have probably said, I'm not doing this.
I know.
When we're younger,
yes,
we tend to just say yes to the Lord so much easier, don't we?
Oh, absolutely. I think so. I mean, when you look even in the Bible, when the Lord spoke to Mary, the mother of Jesus, she was a teenager. Right. And even though she, was wondering how is this going to happen, she still leaned into God's purposes when the angel of the Lord spoke to her and said, it's going to happen this way. And she said, let it be to me. And I think for me, all of these years, even just now, so many years later, 30 some years that I've been a Christian, my go-to saying is, let it be to me according to your will. And I think when we lose that and we start arguing with the Lord, then we start acting like we know more than he does. Right. So it's good to keep that in perspective no matter how many times we have said yes to the Lord previously.
And every time he asks something of us, it's going to require faith.
Absolutely.
There's no time we get to something he's saying and we're like, of course, that's easy.
Oh,
it always requires faith because it always requires partnership with him.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you came to the United States. Did you start speaking right away and traveling? Or
No, actually, I went to Bible college for the first 2 years. That's a whole other journey there because I survived on these $100 for a full year. I had to get scholarship at school, so that was a challenge. Then I found the buses that fed the poor people, so I got on these buses to get food. So it was a long journey for me to start a ministry, and then I was still 19 when I actually started my nonprofit organization. And I started it with this passion, I got to get the world saved before I turn 21. And so I was so passionate about it that I think I got a lot of people excited that God can do the miraculous things. He was doing so many miracles in my life. People were offering me rides to different places. They wanted to be with me, handing me finances just to kind of okay, we just need to see you make it through this phase of life. And so I really started with what was in my hand. And I just want to kind of encourage the people who are listening or watching the podcast today. Yes. You always have to start with what's in your hand. You can't wait until one day you have everything lined up the way you think it's going to be perfect because I don't think it's ever going to happen. Right. I really wanted to support kids that were coming out of the orphanages. In those days, we had human trafficking that were sold into that. That's in the 90s when nobody really even talked about trafficking, but we knew it just because we lived in that kind of system. And I had that $1 that was left out of those 100. And I said, okay, God, this is all I have. I'm just going to collect my $12 for the year and send them to somebody back to Bulgaria to support one kid out of this orphanage. And that was really my desire because prior to that, my sister died when I was 7, when we were still living under communism. Okay. She died as a little baby. And I felt like I went on to the balcony, I looked up, under communism, you don't believe in God, you don't celebrate Christmas, you have a very restrictive environment. And I looked up and I knew somehow that somebody is out there watching my life and knew me by name. And I said, one day when I grow up, I want to help as many boys and girls in honor of my sister. And that's how I just decided I'm going to work with kids one day. The next year, my parents, because I got so depressed, they decided to adopt a little boy out of the orphanage. And he ended up passing away before we could adopt him from malnutrition, lack of physical touch. Wow. So I went back onto the balcony, I looked up, and I said, one day I want to work with orphan kids so that they have a better life and a better future. And that's how I really started. At 7, I felt like I knew what I want to do for the rest of my life. At 16, when the Lord found me, I felt like I talked him into becoming a preacher, but it was really his plan. Yes. And then being here and starting, I felt like I need to do this while I don't have anything so that God can be glorified in all of it. And 2 years into graduating from Bible college is when I started getting a little more invitations. I took everything that I was invited to, even if it was a 5-minute deal or a 10-minute. Even though I had a huge accent in those days, people thought it was, the crackhead and crack up type of a thing. But thank God he sees us the way we're supposed to be rather than in our stages of development. So I didn't quit in the middle of all that.
Resilience is a big word to you.
Yes.
And you have to be resilient to step out in the will of God.
Yeah.
How do we develop this resilience?
Well, for me, it was very important to define myself before other people could define me. And I think in anything that we start, we need to know that we're in partnership with the Lord. Right. That's number one. The number two is going and speaking truth into your life every single day into the mirror and knowing that you're going to be your best encourager. Even if nobody else is there, you got to encourage yourself in the Lord. So I had to learn how to believe myself and believe what God spoke about me before anybody else could believe what I was speaking on stage. Resilience for me, I connected to going in a little green briefcase that I dragged with me from Bulgaria. It only could hold my Bible in it. And I would envision myself with that little briefcase going and changing nations. Like I would go to presidents, I would go to government, I would go to the poorest of the poor, but I was there as an ambassador of Christ. And as I would walk through the school of Bible college with this little briefcase, people didn't see me as an ambassador to the nations. They didn't see me as anything major. I was shy, insecure, still looked like the communist dictatorship was on my face because I looked so oppressed still, even though I was free on the inside. I couldn't connect the smile of my face with the freedom on the inside, so I had to work that out over the years. And I had to learn not to allow naysayers to become my defining voices. So because especially when you start something out, people are going to see you for who you are at the moment. They're not going to see you for where you're going to go. And for me, it was very important that I saw myself in the future and I started acting the future me in the present moment. And I think resilience is built, first of all, the Word of God has to be an important part of our life. Prayer, obviously, you encouraging yourself, defining yourself, but also the resilience part happens when you have circumstances that are coming against you and you decide to ask the right questions. So I'll give an example.
Yes, please.
A few years into my journey here, my mom was diagnosed with cancer and she was given only a few weeks to live. My car had broken down and I had no car. My computer broke down the same week and I was asked to move out of the place where I was staying and I had absolutely no money. So after several years of building an organization and traveling and speaking, all of a sudden I am lying in bed trying to ask myself, which pain do I focus on that's the least painful? And because I didn't want to lose my mom, I didn't know where I was going to live. And all this was happening within just hours. And the Lord spoke something to me that I remember to this day. He said to me, if you learn how to ask the right questions in a time where everything is going against you, you will be able to make it through this, and you will learn this lesson, and you will be able to live anywhere in the world and never be afraid that I'm going to abandon you or leave you in the middle of it. And another thing that I knew that the Lord had spoken to me before is, why do I have so many problems? It feels like every single day I have a new challenge. And God said to me, if you want to touch nations and relate to people from all walks of life, if you don't have a message that you have actually walked through, how are you going to speak to those people if you've never been in their shoes and in their pain? So you're going to go through challenges, not because I hate you or don't love you or I have abandoned you. You're going to walk through these challenges through my grace so you can learn how I can assist, how I can help, and how I'm with you despite of the challenges. But you have to grow up so you learn never to be a victim of your circumstances. And even in that moment, like the next day when I woke up, my mom passed away. And then I had to find a new place to live. But at the same time, the Lord provided a car through an interview I was doing on the radio, and somebody heard about me and my need for a car. Another person felt like God told them to buy me a computer. And so in a supernatural way, the Lord assisted for the payment of my mom's funeral, for my computer, for my housing, for everything. And I look back, and I have even said to people, my life is great, not because everything happened perfectly, but it's because it was full of challenges, and I have seen God work miraculous things over and over and over again. And there is nobody that can stop God's plan from coming to pass in our life.
I think that's so important to note, because we can assume that either circumstances or people are greater. We don't mean to, but we can believe that they're greater than God, and therefore we can't fulfill the plan of God because this happened, or that person.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, no one can stop the plan of God except ourselves if we start saying no or don't walk with him and let him walk us through. Boy, I'm thinking of all this in the context of how young you were and new to the Lord.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not like you had years of discipleship. And no, it was almost like you and Jesus out there, and you're going, okay, let's keep doing this.
Yeah.
But you were so committed to this vision that he'd given to you. And I think that became an anchor, didn't it?
Yes. I think for resilience, people, I read a lot of books. I read a lot of things that people have done. But it's one thing to read about somebody else's life. It's another thing for you to walk out your own journey. But I felt like that saying, he who has a why to live can make it through anyhow. Viktor Frankl said that in a book when he was in a concentration camp by the Nazis. It was somebody else's quote that he quoted, but that quote stuck with me, that our why has to be greater than the immediate how we're going to go through this. And for me, the why was, I'm here to help kids that cannot help themselves. I'm here to be a voice for somebody who doesn't have a voice. I'm here to help my nation, Bulgaria, to have a better future. And I got to be able to make it through this. I can't just stop in the middle of it. Not having finances and being on zero and being told every day you have to leave the country because you cannot make it. You can't extend your visa. You can't do this. You can't do that. There were so many challenges. But for me, perseverance and resilience is built in those times of fire. That I literally had to go to my school and say, I'm going to sleep in front of the Bible school doors, but I cannot go back to Bulgaria without graduating. Because for me, when people give themselves an exit, they will take it. If I have an exit on the road to where I need to go, when it gets hard, I will take the exit. But if I don't give myself an exit and I only see the end result, and that is the salvation of souls, then it doesn't matter what I'm going through. We're going to make it on the other side.
We don't give ourselves an exit.
Yes.
I think so many times we do, and we have. And but what do we miss out? And not just in our lives, but then who misses out on what God has given to us, right? So there's that end purpose that you hold on to. And I think the fact that you did hear from the Lord, you weren't just thinking, someday I would like to do something. It was like you heard him say something to you that became, again, it was that anchor. Without vision, you quit doing what's right.
Yeah.
Right? Proverbs
Yeah.
says without vision, prophetic vision, something from heaven, people quit doing what they need to do. And that kept you on track. But I love that. Give yourself no exit. I'm going to remember that.
Yeah.
Now let's fast forward.
Yes.
Because you have not taken exits.
That's right.
And a few years later, here you are, and you are leading movements that are making tremendous impact, especially with their heart for children. Tell us a little bit about that.
So this year we're celebrating 29 years of being in full-time ministry, the nonprofit organization, and this year has been a big year for us. My goal has been to get as many kids helped with education, with school supplies, with clothing, with whatever they need, emotional, physical, spiritual needs. And we started approaching this from the government down, meaning getting permissions from the government, being able to work in different schools in different locations. But then I realized that's not always going to work. We have to be able to work through the church. We have to be able to empower the church. And we have to be able to go into where the kids are living, which is the poor neighborhoods. And so for the last several years, we created a project called Adopt a Neighborhood. And through the sponsorship of people, we started building playgrounds. And when we build a playground, we just finished our 18th playground.
18th?
Yes, in 3 years.
That is amazing.
Yes, I was going to do first 5 playgrounds, and just the Lord kept on providing through different people. And it's so amazing to bring a playground into a community that does not have anything for the kids to play with. They're literally thrilled, excited. The entire neighborhood, the entire city or village comes together. They're dancing, they're rejoicing.
Wow.
It is a pure excitement to see kids swinging, kids on the merry-go-round. You know, a lot of times in the U.S., there's so many playgrounds.
Right.
The merry-go-rounds are not that really popular. In Bulgaria, you can have 20 kids spinning around on the merry-go-round. And so that has been one big project for us that has opened doors for us to work with the mayors, to work with the local municipalities. Then because of my husband working in film, in the film industry and movies, we released The Pilgrim's Progress in Bulgaria 2 years ago. Into 750 churches partnered with us in showing it.
That's wonderful.
So I wanted to do a big campaign because after the fall of communism and the Jesus film that came out, there hasn't been any major film that could be used on that level nationally for evangelism. And so we felt like, let's make The Pilgrim's Progress on that level. And so all of these churches participated. It actually ended up being in the movie theaters in Bulgaria for 3.5 months. And 45,000 people got to see it just in the movie theater. And then, of course, thousands of people saw it through the church outreaches and everything that they did. Well, then we decided, why not we expand a little bit more and bring in some more film. So we brought in a film called The Butterfly Circus. It's a short film. It's created here in the U.S., and one of the main actors is Nick Vujicic, who was born without arms and legs and born in that kind of an environment where he would be bullied in school. He was wanting to commit suicide from his story. Well, the film shows him as the hero, you know, in overcoming what was against him. And so we started showing the film in schools. And everywhere we went, the kids were just crying. They were like, oh my goodness, we need something that is anti-bullying. We cannot continue forward where the kids are harming themselves. They're just not wanting to do anything that is uplifting. And so the teachers and the directors started coming to us and saying, when are you releasing a program with this? So I thought, what program? We haven't created any program. And last year, me and my team worked so hard on creating an anti-bullying program that we licensed and approved by the Ministry of Education with 2 other programs that were approved this year by the Ministry of Education. We're the first faith-based organization to be approved in programs, not a book, but an actual program that would be brought into the schools. So my goal is all schools to be able to go through the program of anti-bullying. The second program is connected to leadership. We partnered with the John Maxwell leadership
Wonderful.
organization, and their foundation gave us the license for the 3-year program called I Choose, I Do, I Lead. The overall is the I Lead, but basically from grade 5th and up, the kids can learn how to become the next leaders, how to create the right choices, how to do things, and not just talk about dreams. And so we just started the trainings this last month with the teachers, because these are credited courses that they can take, and they can bring them into the school system. And so these are public schools that are using our curriculum, which is amazing. And then we had another curriculum just recently approved, and it's on finances for teaching the kids from grades 1st and up how to use finances, how to create little budgets, how to do things, because
So good.
that's something practical that we can bring in and help them. So for me, it's Adapt to School. That's one campaign, Adapt a Neighborhood, and then Adapt a Child, because that's how we work with our organization. Every life matters, so we have to focus on people individually. We also have to focus on neighborhoods and communities, and then globally on the whole nation and then the whole world. So changing a generation is just for that.
I'm trying to keep up with you in the sense of, here you start with a God-given vision and a dream, and you face all these challenges, lots of reasons why you could have quit, but you don't. You're in a foreign country, just having learned the language. You don't have family with you. You've got people telling you need to go back home, but you keep pressing through. And now government in your country, Bulgaria, is open the doors to you. And if you're wanting to impact a generation, I don't think there's a more intentional place than a school. So you are in the most influential place outside of obviously a family in a child's life.
Yes.
And you're not done.
No.
You're just
We're basically starting.
Yes.
I mean, we have done a lot in 29 years, but I have to say, it was so challenging to raise money on my own, and just through even speaking engagements and partners. I have amazing people that have been with me on this whole journey from the very beginning and supporting us financially and all that. But the more you grow, the more finances you need, like to reach a nation. That's a whole different level. And for me, it's always been, I'm not here just for myself. Like, I'm actually supporting these schools, supporting kids, supporting parents. I mean, there is a lot more here than just me believing for my finances when I first arrived. But I've learned that in the small times when I had $0 and God provided what I needed, then that applies to any level of finances. That if He provided back then He's going to provide now. It doesn't matter how many zeros are behind that. And I have seen a miracle after miracle. And this year was incredible just to see, before you get approved by a government with the Ministry of Education, you have to be a part of the EU and go through an audit in order to get specific ISO 9001 is called, where they look at your organization, they look financially what you're accomplishing, they look at every single detail, and then once you are approved for that, then you can apply for anything else afterwards. And so to come on that level of responsibility, of approval, and knowing that, hey, we are transparent, we're everything that we say we're going to do, we're actually doing it, and we want to move forward. There's 3,500 schools in the country. My goal is right now for 100 schools to implement the program, and then by next year to have 200. We can't go into 3,000 yet, because we need to be able to have enough teachers that are trained. So we're training every week, every month, new teachers. We just trained 56 teachers within the last month and a half, and I feel like we're making good strides forward. But there is going to be more in the next several months that are ahead of us. And I want to have more programs that we bring into the school, and then also partnering with mayors and municipalities. We have discovered, if I offer a playground and a mayor says, what do you want in exchange? Because I'm giving it to them for free. I always say, I want your children. I want to be able to work with the kids in the schools. I want to be able to work with the teachers. Let's help them have a better vision for their future. Let's help them be empowered with the right tools so that they can help these kids have a better lifestyle. And that really helps when
Sure.
you're coming and offering something practical. We also provide school supplies. We just had 500 kids that were given school supplies that were from the poorest of the poor. Now it's Christmas, it's coming. We're going to be giving several thousand Christmas presents. So it's always, we're not just once in a while in the life of
Right.
these kids. We have to create consistency. And I believe that in order to transform somebody, you have to be consistently present and show them love and show them care, show them that you pray for them, but in a way that's tangible.
And it is, you have shown the love of Jesus tangibly, very much so. So are you still traveling? Do you live there, here, in Bulgaria? How does that work?
Yes,
Yeah.
we travel quite a bit with my husband.
And by the way, her husband, we got to take a little pause here to talk about him, because you've been married how many years now?
4 only.
4 years.
Yes.
Yes. And I've met him, Mark. Wonderful.
Yes.
And that was a whole other, right? You were not waiting to run with the vision until you were married.
Yeah.
You were running with the vision God gave you.
Yes.
And then God brought along a wonderful husband, friend, and partner.
Absolutely. For anybody that's listening to this that is still single, that is still wondering if this is ever going to happen for me, am I going to be single for the rest of my life? I have to say this. Every time I tried to make a relationship work on my own, it always failed. And the Lord said, I will bring you one with whom joined together you will touch nations. But I went ahead in other times looking for the one, and it never worked out. And when I met Mark, it was at a business morning breakfast that I was supposed to talk him into working with us. And I wasn't thinking about marriage or anything. I was just trying to get him to work with us on a film. And he ended up working with our team. And then later, in a month and a half, he asked me out. But it was a completely God story, because he was already traveling. He was already with a big heart for missions, for kids, for adoption, for orphans. And of course, he brought in the other aspect that I didn't have involved in movies. So our ministry has literally exploded.
Sure.
In that scripture, one will put 1,000 to flight,
Yes.
but 2, 10,000 is definitely true in my life, because everybody who has known me as a single woman and now as a married one says, in just 4 years, you guys are doing so much more than what you did before. But the thing is, if I wasn't doing what I was already doing in the
Right.
past, I could have met Mark and we could have not been a good fit,
Right.
because I would be stuck in my own pity party,
Yeah.
not recognizing what I have, and I would not have grown. I remember the day when the Lord said to me, the day of an easy escape will never come, because I was sitting around crying that everybody else is married but me. And I got married at age 44. So I just turned actually 49 2 days ago, which to me, it's kind of amazing how quickly time passes.
true.
But at 27, I was having a pity party, how I wanted a husband, and I said this to God, I need him to be a businessman so he can support the ministry so I don't have to raise money anymore. And then I just need him to be able to travel with me. And so I'm crying on the couch, and the Lord says, the day of an easy escape will never come. You need to learn how to be a businesswoman. You need to learn how to handle finances, because why would you want a man who is business person and you're like this, having a pity party? They will never connect with you. You'll never be compatible. And I'm like, okay. I got up. I'm like, I will never ask that question again. And I really think in the journey that we're on with the Lord, it's very important to ask ourselves the right questions so that we define the journey and the hardships in a way of invisible mentors rather than some things they're against me. I'm never going to meet anybody. So I really think that when we go through excruciating circumstances and challenges, that we ask ourselves the right questions, because those are the questions that define us during those moments. We can either become the victim of the circumstances or those moments can become our invisible mentors. And for me, those were the moments that I had to say, I could be single for the rest of my life, but I'm not going to give up, and I'm not going to sit here waiting to start my ministry when my husband shows up. And that's very important for business, for ministry, for anyone that is single, man or a woman, that is waiting around for just to have another partner. Because I want to give a quick example of the fact that when we are miserable, we will attract somebody in our misery. And they will
That's
become
good,
our
yeah.
companion during that time, and they will see us in our weakness. But what if we're actually stronger than who we are during after that?
Right.
Then we have attracted a weaker person to be our partner with us. And a lot of times that happens during our needy times, like I need somebody to be with
Right.
me. And I have been very careful over the years that I do not just attract a guy who was going to see me as this needy person that
Yeah.
needed help, that I attract the person at my strongest place so that they're not trying to push me down and suppress me after that. And that happens a lot with women attracting a
Right.
wrong person who later becomes intimidated by them and then starts to oppress them and push them aside, and there's just problems that transpire. And I'm just very grateful that God brought Mark, and we
Yes.
were both running in the same direction,
Right.
and we recognized each other in that same path, and we said yes to God first and then yes to each other.
Well, that was a great little pause from the ministry journey and your walk, because you're speaking to so many people right now. And there is a tendency, not just with a relationship, but again, waiting until something changes, then I'll be ready to do whatever it is God's called me to. And you said, as we started, what do you have? What do you already have?
Yeah.
Start there
Yes.
and run at it. And at the right time, the Lord will bring that person along. But a person like Mark, it was worth the wait, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
And you're making up for whatever time you thought you guys didn't have enough in 4
Yes.
years.
Yes.
Your relationship, your friendship, and your partnership has
Yes.
already super exceeded what normal 4 years are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So grateful.
So grateful. Yes, indeed. So you have written some books.
I have. From all the problems and challenges I've had over the
Well,
years,
it's-
I came up with a few books.
That's right. It's your message, right?
It
You
is my
overcame and-
message. Let me show the people. This was my very first book. If you have God, you have everything. And this is my life story of coming out of communism and arriving here with my $100 and surviving. So this is more like just life story, very easy read. And then I lived in Seattle for quite a bit, for 12 years. And everybody drank coffee around me in the coffee shops.
That's right.
And they were very much into spiritual things, but they didn't have the Lord. So I felt like I wanted to create books that are called A Cup of Inspiration, 21 Sips of Inspiration.
Oh, that's good.
So I just did these little devotionals. I published them, and I would bring them into different coffee shops around Washington State and just put them there for people to read. So they became like little volumes. So
That's a
I have
great
3
idea.
different volumes on that. And then my big book that I spend a lot of time working on is Motivated by the Impossible. This book I wrote while I was still living here in California for several years. It won several awards and became a bestseller on Amazon. But the whole thing about the book is that Motivated by the Impossible was not about me changing the world. It was about me changing myself. And that's really the journey that we're on. How do we change ourselves through God's help? And the Lord really gave me certain aspects and points that I have put in the book that help people on their own journey. This is not really just about me, even though I use personal stories, scripture. I also use behavioral psychology because I studied that. I wanted to help people understand what happens in their mind and body when they go through traumatic circumstances, and how do we handle it, how do we overcome them. But also, after every chapter, you have an area to ask questions, and I have written exampled questions so that people do ask the right questions during those specific troubles and moments of uncertainties. And I think it helps people with that. And then, of course, you have like a little area where you can draw, you can write, and have like your own journey of life of discovering your own invisible mentors. So that's like one of my signature books. And then Exposed to Hope is about our kids in Bulgaria and their stories of who we've rescued, how they've changed their lives. And anybody can find us on changingAgeneration.net. And also I have a personal website, ceitci.org, ceitci.org. So that's on the internet. I'm the only person with that name.
Yes,
Ceitci.
that will be easy.
So once they know how to spell it, they'll be able to find me on
Yeah.
social media, on the internet, websites. So I am there.
And we'll make sure to post it on the YouTube channel because we want people to be able to connect, not just
Thank
with
you.
your story, but also with your ministry. And
Thank
who
you so
knows
much.
what can happen, right?
Yeah,
one listener,
absolutely.
one viewer, that
Yeah.
this could be a dot connected for them, and they begin to partner with you. So before we close, you mentioned, I mean, you lived 16 years. Was it 16 years under communism?
Yes.
Anything from those 16 years and knowing communism that you want to share with us? And, our nation has changed a lot. Sometimes when you come from a different nation, you see things in the nation you're in that make you go, oh, don't go this direction. This doesn't lead where you think it's going to lead,
Yes.
right? What are some of the lessons I think that you would want to share with us?
Well, I think so. For me, I was already born in communism, so it was already pre-established, and I didn't know what freedom meant. I only knew what bondage was, but we didn't know that that was bondage. We thought that that was freedom because everything was defined for us. Your choices were already predetermined. You were only told what to believe and what to think, and everything was controlled through fear. You also belonged to the government and to the state. You didn't belong to your own family. At any point, somebody could come and arrest you for speaking out your mind, put you in a concentration camp. So it was constantly fear. People that were Christians were persecuted. They were put in concentration camps. I wasn't a Christian, so I wasn't aware of any of that. And anytime I would ask a question, I was always told not to ask too loud because somebody could hear us. So very much distrust between neighbors, between people, because you didn't know who is actually a spy, who is going to betray you. And so you grow up with that mindset of survival. You and your family are trying to survive amidst everybody else who may be betraying you. I remember the day when we had to go and give honor to the man who founded communism in Bulgaria. Together with Vladimir Lenin out of Russia, Georgy Dimitrov founded communism in Bulgaria, and his body was in a mausoleum where it was held as though with machines, as though he's still alive. So there is machines pumping through the body just to keep him as though he's still alive.
Really?
Yes. Very, very interesting. I think Vladimir Lenin's body is still like that in Moscow, but I'm not certain after communism. But for us, at first grade, we were told to go there to the museum and to give our respects. And so people are coming by and they're literally bowing before the dead person's body. And they're thanking him because we were taught to believe that the Communist Party is our life, that this is what we're there for, that they give us life, that we are better off than any other nation in the Western world, and they were all against us, and we're the only ones with Russia that are on the right track. So news was very limited. We only had one station. The same news was from 7 to 10 p.m., and that was it. Throughout the day, didn't have anything else to look and watch. Of course, now things are completely different, but back in the day, you had no exposure to outside news, and if anybody had any exposure, they were immediately taken out. Their voices were silenced. And so I came home, and I was completely in shock that somebody who is dead demanded our worship, because when you think about it, religion and dictatorships who are dead, they demand worship of us and our will and our mind and our soul. But Christ, who is alive, never makes a demand. And I started asking questions like, what happens to us after death? And my mom was a teacher, and because when you were a teacher in those days, you belonged to the Communist Party, she said, you cannot ask that question in school. You cannot ask that question out into the neighborhood or the streets. Nothing happens to us. We just die, and that's it. But I was just the curious me, and that's how at age 7, that's why I ended up on the balcony believing that there has to be somebody out there that believes in us, that knows us by name. Like I knew that we're not by ourselves. But that's how communist countries and parties work. They suppress the person, they take away their will to choose, their right to speak, and they control you through fear. And then eventually just to think, only 2 generations from now, people could end up in a dictatorship, oppressive system. And they would never even know what it was like to be in freedom.
Yeah.
And we were told until Ronald Reagan, as a president in 1989, when communism fell, he was there speaking in 86, I believe, at the Berlin Wall. That was the first time news actually trickled on the little TV that we had, and they showed a very small segment of him speaking at the Berlin Wall, the main big speech of Mikhail Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And I thought, what wall are we tearing down? I mean, I'm 12. I'm wondering, are we the one in bondage? Like, we were told over here that we're the ones living in utopia. Like, this is great. This is life. And then I hear that, oh, wow, like we're the ones missing out on something, and there is a wall, and that we can't cross over onto the other side because somebody else is different than us. And so I started asking these questions. And then, of course, when communism fell, I felt like he was speaking the truth to us. He was there speaking about our freedom. And so President Reagan is one of my favorite presidents just because he brought that freedom over to the other side of us. And I really, when I just viewed one of his films that is made for him, it's called the Reagan film, I saw there that was his calling. He felt like he was called to break communism down and to bring freedom into the Eastern European bloc and stop the Cold War. So I'm the person on the other side of the screen, of the wall. And we always have to think about that. Who is the person waiting on the other side of our obedience? Who is the person waiting on the other side of the bondage that they need to be delivered from? And we're there as an answer. And so for me, communism is a dictatorship system that takes the dignity of any human being and creates a false dignity and false sense of freedom, that you basically have absolutely nothing, but you're happy with it because you were told that that's how you need to live.
Yeah. And as you said, can be 2 generations away from coming under that type of dictatorship. You know, we think here in the United States that could never happen. And that's not true. It very well could happen. We have to be alert. We have to be spiritually alert to these things, and not allow fear to control, and not to be silenced either.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
not to depend on government to provide for everything. Well, when somebody comes in with the idea of, I will take care of you and I will provide for every need outside of God, that lets you know we're headed down the wrong direction. And so, but even that, growing up under that regime, under communism, God used it to shape you for what he is doing in you today.
If I had never grown up in bondage, I would have no appreciation of freedom. And I would not be able to recognize it. That's why a lot of people who have not grown up in that kind of a dictatorship are easily swayed to believe that communism or socialism are great, where they're brother and sister. Actually, socialism is the foundation of communism. The Communist Party and the communist dictatorship is the cherry on top of the cake. You have to have a socialist state before you can have communism. And that's what Vladimir Lenin did. Like, he took the socialist ideology and created it into a communist. And we had to study Marx, we had to study Lenin, we had to study the ideologies, we had to study about Stalin, and we literally were taught to study them as heroes, that those people were the heroes of the day, because it didn't matter how many people had died under the dictatorship of those people. They were given to us as though they had founded something great, and we're all equal. And see, in a system that is all equal with false equality, people cheat, they steal, they destroy each other. And there is a lot of bitterness, a lot of jealousy. So anytime somebody wants to progress and has a new idea, the person that is supposedly equal to them immediately is going to destroy their life, because why would you succeed above me? We all have to stay equal. And that's what I believe happened to us as a nation. Even now, like, it's been 30 years or more that communism fell, when I go back into certain areas of Bulgaria, it's as though people have stopped living life and they're still living with the mindset of the Communist Party. Well, where is the government to take care of us? Where is this? Where is that? We had a better life in the bondage because they didn't have to take responsibility. And for looking back just to see how little we had, but we were all happy in a sense of like the happiness that we were given. We were only told you're going to be happy this much. Looking back, for people who have never even been to countries that have been oppressed, we were not allowed to smile on pictures. We were not allowed to smile.
I never heard that.
Yes. I mean, if you look at all of my baby pictures or even when I was little, everybody looks like they're depressed. That's why for me, coming to America and everybody was so expressive, I didn't know how to connect the smile and my joy with my face and what was inside of me. It had to work on it. I had to go and learn how to smile in the mirror because I didn't have those smiling muscles developed. And now I can't stop smiling. But that was one thing. And then another thing, if you, at least that's how I was raised, if you were in a position where you meet a person in a higher position than you and you're just the student and you're talking to a director or a teacher, you always had to bow down and you never had an eye contact because of respect. So I come from that to America where people are looking at my eyes and I'm like, I'm not worthy to be looked into the eyes. So I had to change that mindset. So there is a lot of things that the Communist Party does to remove the dignity of a person and to cause them to feel like they're insignificant and they're nobody.
So opposite of the kingdom of God, who brings dignity
yes.
and honor to each person.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when I have heard people say that Jesus is a socialist, when we have had various things happen in the U.S. in the last several years, I think that that is probably one of the most ignorant statements and very demeaning to who Christ is. First of all, Christ should never be in the politics and connected to that. But second of all, people who have never studied socialism and communism think that giving away to the poor means that you're a socialist. That is not what socialism means. We were made to give without our will. When you're forced to give, that's a completely different dictatorship. And here, God is saying, give because it's better to give than to receive. Give because you love. Give because you respect. Give because that's who I am. Like, that's my nature. That's a different way of approaching it. Because I said, if that's the case, why wasn't our dictatorship party giving everything away to us? Why were they taking away everything from us in order for them to have a better life? People who were on the top always demeaned everybody from the bottom.
And the top always lived really, really well.
Oh, yeah. They had no idea about the consequences of communism because they were the ones leading it. I mean, we had a dictator for 45 years out of the 47 that we were under communism.
Wow.
And so we had no idea that elections were held in such a way where you go there and you vote for the one candidate and he wins 100% of the vote and every single time. So it was an interesting reality when communism fell. And for the first night in November 11th, 1989, I still remember communism falling down. And people are on the streets yelling freedom and waving banners and burning statues that were built by the Communist Party. They burned that mausoleum with the founder of the Communist Party immediately that same night, I believe. There was just a lot of destruction that took place because when people have lived in bondage for so long, then they have no idea what freedom means. So then it becomes complete chaos. Nobody wanted to work. Everybody wanted to destroy what was already built. So it was very chaotic for a very long period of time, but that's how oppression works. And that's also the first time we heard about the gospel. The first several weeks, the good news of the gospel started coming in, and we were like, there is a God? Like, nobody told us there is a God. people were getting saved right and left. It was an incredible experience because I was one of the first people to get saved as well.
We, as communism has fell that many years ago, there's still such a wonderful opportunity to get the gospel out. Mm-hmm. So different from before. And we need to take every opportunity. Everyone must hear that Jesus is Lord.
Absolutely.
And that he came to save.
Absolutely.
Well, Ceitci, thank you for taking time to be with us and to share your story. I would love for
Thank
you
you
to
so much.
Look straight at our listeners, our viewers, and just speak a word of encouragement. These are women in the different spheres of influence, and share something that will strengthen them today.
Sure. I mean, I just want to encourage you, wherever you may be in your journey with the Lord or your journey in ministry or business, the first thing, never give up and choose not to take the exit road just because things may be tough for you right now. Also, the second thing is never allow other people to define who you are. Always ask the Lord to tell you who you are, what you're called to do, and have your why bigger than yourself. When we live for something that is bigger than us, it gives us the motivation and the zeal to press through the challenges. And always know God is for you, never against you. Right. And so when you have him on your side, you can make it everywhere and anywhere. When he says yes, nobody else can say no to him. So trust him in that and keep on moving forward boldly, strengthened, knowing that Jesus is on your side.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
I know you've been encouraged and so strengthened by you and by your story. I encourage you to find out more about Ceitci and the ministry that she leads. I think you're going to want to be a part of it. Can't wait to see you next time on She Speaks.